Theodore Roosevelt gave the speech, "The Man with the Muck-Rake," on April 14, 1906, at the completion of the construction of the office building of the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. The speech quickly grew famous around the United States as it coined the term "muckraker" that is now widely used to describe progressive journalists in the early 1900s who exposed corrupt businessmen and politicians. Even today, Roosevelt's Muck-Rake speech is remembered as one of his most famous, along with his New Nationalism speech at Osawatomie, Kansas. In Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, you may recall the description of the man with the muck-rake, the man who could look no way but downward, with the muck-rake in his hand, who was offered a celestial crown for his muck-rake, but who would neither look up nor regard the crown he was offered, but continued to rake to himself the filth of the floor. In Pilgrim's Progress, the man with the muck-rake is set forth as an example of him whose vision is fixed on carnal instead of spiritual things. Yet he also typifies the man who in this life consistently refuses to see aught that is lofty, and fixes his eyes with solemn intentness only on that which is vile and debasing. Theodore Roosevelt. The aforementioned passage, Roosevelt explains his new term through an allusion to John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. In the novel, the man with the muck-rake continues to rake muck throughout his life without looking up at his surroundings. Roosevelt compares this character to progressive journalists during the Progressive Era. These journalists do whatever is needed to make a sensational story for their newspaper, regardless of whether it is the truth or not. Roosevelt throughout this speech criticizes these muckrakers that do not pay attention to the harmful results of their untruthful attacks on American society. Roosevelt continues his speech with examples of the negative effects of muckraking, such as a labor shortage for the construction of the Panama Canal. Roosevelt then insults the morality of these muckrakers and begs them to stop muckraking unless the writers check their facts and predict what the possible consequences of the article or expose may be. At the risk of repetition, let me say again that my plea is not for immunity to, but for the most unsparing exposure of, the politician who betrays his trust, of the big businessman who makes or spends his fortune in illegitimate or corrupt ways. There should be a resolute effort to hunt every such man out of the position he has disgraced. Expose the crime and hunt down the criminal, but remember that even in the case of crime, if it is attacked in sensational, lurid, and untruthful fashion, the attack may do more damage to the public mind than the crime itself. Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt expertly uses many rhetorical devices throughout his speech, such as alliteration, polysyntons, allusions to the Bible and to Greek mythology, allusions to current events, ethical appeals to nationality, logical appeals, parallelism, and rhetorical questions. Through the use of these rhetorical devices, Roosevelt makes the speech more interesting, as well as more appealing and more memorable. Roosevelt also says a paragraph from Richard Hooker's of the Laws of Ecclesiastical Polity. Through this connection, Roosevelt compares the Puritans of England to the muckrakers of the Progressive Era. The forces that tend for evil are great and terrible, but the forces of truth and love, and courage and honesty and generosity and sympathy are also stronger than ever before. It is a foolish and timid, no less than a wicked thing, to blink the fact that the forces of evil are strong, but it is even worse to fail to take into account the strength of the forces that tell for good. Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt concludes his speech by praising the average American citizen and the ideals on which the United States was created upon. Roosevelt says that these ideals and morals, the knowledge between right and wrong, are the foundation stone of the nation. This idea ties Roosevelt's entire speech back to the event he is celebrating that day, the construction of an office building in Washington, D.C. Materially, we must strive to secure a broader economic opportunity for all men, so that each shall have a better chance to show the stuff of which he is made. Spiritually and ethically, we must strive to bring about clean living and right thinking. We appreciate that the things of the body are important, but we appreciate also that the things of the soul are immeasurably more important. The foundation stone of national life is, and ever must be, the high individual character of the average citizen. Theodore Roosevelt.